Looks like we've got about 53 participants on the meeting. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock. There'll probably be some stragglers come on board. But welcome to the FPMA's COVID-19 information webinar on disinfection. My name is Sean Brantley. I'll be the moderator for today's meeting. I'm the FPMA Government Affairs Chairperson, along with our President, Suzanne Graham, and I'm also a Director for Region 9, which is Pinellas County. So I'm hoping we have a great conversation today, and the people that signed up get some very helpful information. There's a little bit of etiquette I'd like to go over. First things first, please remain on mute. If you for some reason are not on mute, place yourself on mute, because every noise in your background is picked up across the whole system and no one can hear anything. Also, conversations can be picked up and things like that. Be aware your camera is on. So try not to pick your nose or stand up if you're not wearing pants, or take the computer to the bathroom with you, because these things have happened on phone calls like this and it's very embarrassing. Hey, and Mr. Driver over there on the iPhone in the pink shirt, yeah, see thumbs up. Watch where you're going, don't watch the video link. So another thing to be careful with is the little green button bottom center. It says screen share. If you push that, your computer will explode. Seriously, please don't push the screen share button. That's for the speakers to do their thing with. If you push screen share, you take over the whole screen and we can't do anything with it. So don't unmute, don't push the green button, and try not to show us anything you don't want us to see on your camera. So as we move forward through this meeting, you're going to hear a lot of great information. You're going to hear a lot of good points, and you're probably going to have some questions. Those questions, will you please email those to Leslie? So her email is very easy. It's leslie@flpma.org. So leslie@flpma.org will be collecting all the questions. As she gets through those questions, as you can imagine, there'll probably be 10 that are the same. She'll cull the herd, so to speak, and get those to me. And then towards the end, when we have some time, we'll get those to the respective speaker for answers. So we've allotted about an hour for this discussion. I am sure we'll be close, maybe a little bit over, depending on the drive that we're doing. I want to start off with some introductions first to introduce our wonderful speakers. I'd like to start off first with Mr. Greg Bauman from NISIS. So Greg, could you just take a minute, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you work, your experiences, family, and I don't know, maybe something that you like to do for fun.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We hear you.
Woohoo, that was a little scary. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and we appreciate the opportunity to share some of our experiences today. As you mentioned, I'm with NISIS Corporation based out of Tennessee. We've been under the stay-at-home order, as most people have. However, our manufacturing operation is still moving full speed. And we've essentially ended up getting into this because of a product that we make, but we're not here to talk about a product today. We're here to talk about the good of the whole. And so that's the approach we'd like to take. Okay.
All right, Greg, thanks. Sounds like a good way to go. Next up, Alan Fugler. Alan used to be our EVP here at FPMA, so most people know him. And he knows most of you that are on this call. So he's now serving our industry from that insurance side of things. So Alan, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're working, some experiences, family, what you do for fun?
Fantastic. Yes, Sean, thank you. I've been with Houston International Insurance Group, the Exterminator Pro program now for about 6.5 years, been gone from FPMA. I've got about 29 years in time in service in the industry, about half of which was spent in the nonprofit business with FPMA and Louisiana Pest Management Association. The other half dealing with pest control insurance exposures. I'm a Louisiana native, go Tigers, national champions. Joe Burrow, #1 pick in the draft, but we're not here to talk about football. And I'm here to share some experiences and some observations after this unprecedented upheaval in the industry. So hopefully we're going to learn and grow from this experience.
Thank you, Alan. Sounds like a good one. Last but not least is my brother from another mother, Mr. Mark Ruff. Mark, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, who you work for, something fun about you?
Sure. My name is Mark Ruff. I'm FPMA's general counsel. I have a practice in Maitland, Florida, and my practice is really restricted to defense of the pest control industry. I represent about 65 pest control companies across the United States. Right now, I'm holed up at my farm in High Springs, Florida with my wife, and we just got through the tornadoes last night, and I'm here and lucky to be here and happy to go on this webinar with everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Life is good then. So Greg, NICES has this incredibly unique position in the pest control world and offering pest control products, and now an EPA List N product in your DSV. Could you tell us a little bit about that product?
Sure, sure. Well, NICES DSV has been around for oh gosh, probably 15 years now. It was originally kind of a niche product, and it was designed to fill a void primarily during floods or with wildlife removal or even rodent removal. Sometimes you're going to want to have disinfection in a small area. And then we had the pandemic, and we found that the product is actually on the EPA List N, which means that is effective against the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the cause of COVID-19. And so it has been, we never really went out and said, oh, let's really push this because of COVID. What happened was we started getting a demand. And so that's how this all came about. We jumped right in and we tried to familiarize ourselves with some of the technology involved with the medical side of things, although we're not physicians. And we evolved into an industry leader in terms of what's going on with the COVID-19 crisis.
So a little bit more on the process of how you got here, and tell us a little bit more about the practical side of application with DSV.
Sure, absolutely. Do you want to go through the, should we go ahead and switch over to screen share? Can we do that?
Oh, you can do that. That sounds great.
Okay, all right.
We see your screen.
Perfect. Yay, how's that?
Looks great.
Everybody okay? All right, you hear me okay then, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Technology is working, okay. So what we really want to explore is, the real question has been not disinfection is right for you and how are you going to do it? The real question is whether it is right for you. And I think that that's a very important point. We have a long history of doing some great things as an industry, and we certainly protect people's food, health, property, the environment, and probably never before have we run into a situation where it's a real life or death situation at this moment. We know that pests can be life or death, but at this moment, probably the closest we've come is the bed bug resurgence. This became almost a pandemic in itself. And the industry reacted. And so it was a good dry run to get ready for something so devastating and so concerning as COVID-19. So what we really want to do is we want to talk about, whether disinfection serves, and you have to think about certain things and make sure it is in fact right for you before you jump into it. So for this particular portion, the first portion, we're going to talk about the current situation. We want to talk about industry activities. And we want to step through a few points to consider as you make a decision whether you want to get into the disinfection world. We might have been involved in sanitizing before. We might have been involved in helping restaurants before. We might have been involved in food processing before, but never have we gone into a situation where we may have viruses in an area, and we have to think about that for not only our customers, but for our employees as well. And I have to say that we started doing webinars about, oh gosh, probably 4 weeks ago now. And every time we do a new webinar, the entire program changes because things are evolving by the day. Not only the numbers, but just the technology out there. The level of education in this industry has been phenomenal, because 4 weeks ago, we would start talking about the virus and where it came from. And this was all pretty much new to most people. And now we don't even get into that. We all know about where it came from and how it's been rolling along. And we really just want to focus on the nuts and bolts for the industry itself. Well, let's talk about where we are as a country and as Florida. And these numbers, I can tell you right by now, these numbers are old. But nationwide, 861,000 plus cases with 48,000 plus deaths. And in Florida, just about 29,000 cases with 960 deaths. And I suspect if you Google that today, you'll find that those numbers are different in Florida as well. So about 15,000 new cases are being diagnosed every day. And a lot of people believe that especially CDC, that they believe that these numbers are probably underreported because the testing is still really not mainstream yet. Where we live in Tennessee, we cannot get testing very easily. And so we expect these numbers are going to be higher. So like I said, just keep up with what's going on. The news does a pretty good job just giving you the latest numbers. And one really great go-to source is CDC, which is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, cdc.gov. And every time you see the president at a press conference, he has Anthony Fauci, who is with National Institutes of Health, and you also sometimes see the CDC people there as well. So let's talk about what our customers are experiencing right now. A while back we were saying it's confusing because this is a whole new world. This is a pandemic. It's almost like the flu of 100 years ago. But what's happening now is the states are starting to reopen. And with the reopening, there's some confusion as far as what does reopening really mean? People have been sequestered at home for weeks, and they're not sure what reopening really means at this point. And I bet a week from now, if we have this discussion, we'll have a much clearer picture of what reopening really means. There has been inconsistent messaging area to area and state to state. Georgia is opening up, right away. South Carolina is opening up right away. Tennessee is opening up a little bit. Virginia, not so much. New York, not at all at this point. So it's really interesting to see how the messaging is going to be varying from state to state and even area to area within your state, especially if you have strong county governments. Customers are also experiencing a fear of getting sick when they go back to work. Okay, so the concern about this virus is not over. Nobody is saying it's business as usual, it's all over, go back to work. And there's a stress adjustment as well. When you have daycares, is your child going to be able to go to daycare? How about your children? Are they going to be able to go to school? Are you going to be able to find a place for them? So there's a tremendous amount of the new normal, if you will. And then, of course, there's always the anxiety that loved ones are going to be harmed and get the disease. With 15,000 new cases a day, we expect that this is not going to go away anytime soon. And a lot of the measures that we've taken have really helped. So who are you going to turn to? You're going to be at home. You have a business that you want to reopen. It could be a hair salon. It could be a bowling alley in Georgia. They've opened those, which I thought was an interesting pick of things to open up. Bowling alleys in the first list. But regardless of the reasoning, people are turning to the pest management industry for assistance. And the main reason is because who are you going to call? You have service providers. Maybe the person that cleans? Probably not. How about the plumber? No. The carpenter? Not at all. Painter? Probably not. Who are you going to call? The person that protects your life every day, the pest management professional. So this is where the pest management professional is getting called in. Again, nobody in the industry has said, let's all go out and try to grab a market. This has come to us. So the customers are seeking disinfection services in their homes and in their businesses. A lot of businesses being closed down, they just would feel a lot better if things were disinfected before they get back in. But remember that new normal I was talking about, it's foreign to us and it's also foreign to the customers. So we're not sure what that really is going to mean. All we know is people are asking us, can you come in and disinfect an area of my house, or can you come in and take care of my business to give me that peace of mind? And this all goes back to historically in the industry, we have been protectors of health and will be protectors of health going forward. I think this is real opportunity, regardless if you do this service or not. It's a real opportunity to show the importance of our industry in maintaining and protecting health. Well, three groups have had pretty much the lion's share of the industry response on a national basis. And we'll talk about NICES. I can't talk about other companies, so I'm not sure exactly what they did. And then we'll talk about the American Chemistry Council and, of course, the National Pest Management Association. I also want to commend the Florida Pest Management Association for having the foresight to put on this webinar today. So this is one of the great values of membership in FPMA. Well, NPMA has really focused on the declarations early on that pest management is an essential service. And they made sure that companies can operate during the mandatory stay-at-home order. And yes, we all know it's been about a month for some states. And we're seeing that some of these orders are getting relaxed a little bit, and we'll start to see people go back to work. But here's another question that had to be raised. What about the commercial applicators and proper credentials? Can you go out and do disinfection services just if you have the GHP certification? And that was a really interesting question, because some states do require additional categories if they are, in fact, going to allow disinfection services. Let's talk about what NICES did. Well, we raised the issue that disinfection service is much more of a risk than insect control. And so we wanted to train right away on understanding the issues and concerns. This is, if you go out and you do a roach job and you don't get exactly what the customer expected, you can go back and take care of it. In this particular case, we're potentially talking about far-reaching consequences. And so we really wanted to caution people to be extremely careful about this. And one of the things we did was we put a lot of information on our website, right on the main page. You don't have to go looking for it. It's at nicescorp.com. We put together some questions and answers on COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus itself, and the use of the product DSV, which we're not going to really dive into too much today. And we also wanted to do a survey and find out what states do require additional licensing. At the same time, we requested the American Chemistry Council to mobilize the states to get this licensing thing straight, and they really did a good job. The sad part is some states don't allow pest control companies to do work without additional category, but they will allow unlicensed, uncertified, and untrained cleaning companies to do it. And that's a really frightening thing at this point. Let's talk about where we are now. Most states, including Florida, allow pest management companies to apply disinfectants. Okay. So what we do know about this, and this is really important if you think about a service protocol, this virus will remain on hard surfaces such as steel and be viable for perhaps 3 days, probably the same on plastics, and about 1 day on cardboard. Okay, so this is not something, so if somebody does bring the virus in, it's not just going to die immediately if it doesn't have a human host. So here's really the question. Do you even want to get into disinfection? That's what we're here to talk about. First of all, you're cleared to work. In Florida, yes, you are cleared to work. All right, there's no question about it. But you also have to ask, is there a demand? Is it going to be current customers or new customers? And what are you going to do after the crisis? Maybe you're going to use this to replace some commercial work that's not being done now. After this is all over, are you going to continue to offer this kind of service? If you do, you most likely are going to have a different division that does this. And this is something I'll defer to Mark and Alan on, because they'll probably have some information on this. Another thing that's really important to ask is your staff committed to work in high-risk situations during this time? Remember, staff people, the technicians are going through the same type of stress as everybody else right now. So that's really an important point. Does your current certification cover it? In Florida, it does. And this is a really, really important point. I'm not saying this just because Alan's on, okay? This is a really important point. We've said this from day one. Does your insurance policy cover disinfection? This is incredibly important. You're going to hear about this today, so I'm not going to cover any more of this, but do not ignore the insurance requirement. And service agreements, and this is probably for Mark, I guess, but we don't want people playing lawyer. We've seen situations where people are taking termite contracts, scratching out a few things, reprinting them as a disinfection service agreement. This is something, if you're going to have an agreement, you definitely want to have professional help writing. And there are no boilerplates that you should just use and fill in your name. You want to have somebody customize one for you. So you want to know your strengths and limitations as well. We're not going to be disinfecting the entire structure. We're not making the structure virus free. That's impossible. But we are reducing the chances of viruses wherever you've done the actual treatment itself. Remember, and I'm going to say this once, I'll probably say it again, most disinfectants are only going to be viable on hard, non-porous surfaces. Very few are going to take care of soft surfaces. So all disinfectants kills the virus, right? You're picking a product now. Well, this is a really nice product. It's a nice scatter bait that you can put outside. It takes care of ants, roaches, slugs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a great pesticide, right? Does it take care of this? Absolutely not. And I think that the point is, just because something's a disinfectant, as an example, doesn't mean it's going to take care of SARS-CoV-2. Most important thing you can do, and this is something Sean referenced earlier, you want to make sure that any product you select or consider is on list N. You go to EPA.gov, that's the EPA website, EPA.gov, and you type in the registration number, the first two numbers, and see if it's on that list. And you can see the active ingredients, the registration numbers on the far left there. Well, you can use an example here. Nicest DSV. Registration number is 10324-80-64405, and you can see that it's actually on the list. It's not made by Mason Chemical, it's made by us, but Mason Chemical makes the base, okay? So here you go. You want to match up anything you're selecting, make sure those first two numbers are on list N. If it's not on the list, do not use it. It's not going to work. Okay, and you can see a nicest DSV, it does have human coronavirus on there. So all surfaces have to be clean, and then disinfection is 100% control, sanitizing is 99.9. Always make sure that clean equipment is used. And for the case of DSV, which is a quaternary ammonia, it has low odor, it does a really good job, and it controls the SARS-CoV-2. Dilution rate is 2 ounces per gallon of water, or if you're wet misting, 3 ounces per gallon. And apply to all hard non-porous surfaces, and it remains there for 10 minutes residence time. And anything that's going to touch food, you want to clean that off as well. So follow PPE, but do not just use the pesticide PPE. You want to look at additional precautions because people are going to be in areas with viruses. So you do want to make sure that you have proper PPE, and you get that from the health department, the county health department. I'm going to read labels, and people are guaranteeing disinfection with a 90-day residual. It doesn't work. There will not be disinfectants that leave residual protection like that. So what kind of an application? Any type of an applicator is going to work. Could be a wet mist Axazol, could be a sprayer, could be a mop, it could be a sponge in a bucket. So traditional space fogging is not encouraged because we're not knocking insects out of the air here, and certainly no thermal fogging. You can use a wet mister and a fogger to try to get into areas, but again, we're looking at hard surfaces. Any hard surface, like in a kitchen, you want to clear the clutter, you want to then disinfect, and then they can put the materials back there. And if you go into a school, for example, lots of hard non-porous surfaces can be treated, reducing the chances of the virus. An office, the same way. All right, you have opportunity to treat all these hard non-porous surfaces. Food processing facility, wet mister, absolutely will work just fine. And in restaurants are busy right now. They're going to need this kind of work, all those hard non-porous surfaces. And make sure that you maintain proper records as required by the state for any type of a pesticide application. And I kind of ran through that pretty fast, Sean, but I wanted to make sure that we have some background and make sure that we know that list N is really, really important.
Yes, that was a really good presentation. Thank you very much. Alan, Greg brought up some key points regarding the requirements a PCO has to follow to perform this type of specialized service. I mean, aren't we talking about maybe providing a service that can have some exposure to a company for either the employee, the customer, or even a property claim?
There are unique exposures with this, Sean. And when I use the term exposure, I'm speaking in insurance language. Exposure is a potential source of claims as opposed to a pesticide exposure. An exposure, a physical exposure to a pesticide or even a pathogen. I'm talking specifically about an exposure in insurance lingo that would be a potential source of claims. First off, a disclaimer: I am not a coverage attorney and I'm not a claims adjuster. Those people are barred and or licensed in different states. So what I'm about to give you is a layperson's interpretation of this. I'll speak to the general liability, the workers' comp, and the commercial property implications of providing this service and kind of where we are with COVID-19 and coronavirus in general. There are some movements afoot. You may see them in your advertising on your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed about business interruption insurance. That coverage is written as a broadening endorsement on your commercial property insurance, and it's really designed for what they call covered perils like fire or wind. If your property that you own or the property that you depend on, or the roads even accessing your property are damaged, rendered unusable or restricted, that business interruption insurance, the net business interruption insurance, is kind of your net proceeds, your net profit. That is a guaranteed source of income if your property is damaged by those covered perils. We saw it most recently in Hurricane Michael. We had some claims up in the Panhandle where business interruption did kick in because of the covered peril that rendered properties unusable. It's a stretch and probably a reinterpretation, and certainly there's going to be litigation to that effect to extend that those covered perils to COVID-19 because it doesn't speak to it at all. In terms of general liability, it really is not a considered exposure. When your general liability application was processed last time, COVID-19 treatments, human virus treatments, human-to-human pathogen treatments, sanitation and disinfecting services as a standalone service were not probably identified on the application. And in most cases, in most cases, the application is the DNA of the account. If there is a type of business you're in that you're not disclosing the application, there could be some coverage implications. Again, I'm not a coverage attorney. I'm just speaking generalities. So the application is what the underwriter uses to assess the relative risks on that account and to assign and to rate it properly. This exposure, of course, was unknown 3 months ago. Heck, this strain of coronavirus was unknown 3 months ago. So we really are behind the 8 ball on this. I would really kind of push people to get specialized coverage for this in kind of the environmental remediation. If you want to get in the business, environmental remediation type coverage is what I would suggest you do, like a mold cleanup, health-related molds or asbestos or biohazard areas. Those coverages really are the most applicable to this exposure. If you're going to secure this type of exposure, you certainly want to have your company named as an additional insurance on this certificate of additional insured, pardon me, on this certificate of insurance. The application process is like a separate underwriting for a new business or renewal business. You'll have to provide them with standard operating procedures for treatments, labels, decontamination procedures, sample contracts, any licensing that you have, and any experience that you have. There are certain states, Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, being the ones that instantly come to mind, that have separate microbial categories. Of course, that doesn't apply. Florida's at 482 and 5E14 are silent on those two on microbial treatments. So there really isn't any prohibition against using your pest control license to treat for those, but there isn't any permission either. It's just silent on it. And if you're going to secure this type of coverage, or if you're going to assume or get coverage, try to get coverage from a pest control market from one of the handful of companies that traditionally write this coverage, you want to make sure that you don't have exclusions that either provide sublimits in the coverage, or actually provide restrictions on the liability portion of the coverage. There are some fairly standard endorsements that exclude liability coverage that will leave you with basically property damage coverage for those fungal and bacterial microbial type of exposures. Workers' comp could have a separate endorsement which would limit coverage for communicable diseases too. So you may want to check your policies for that. And the fallback position is really to go to your licensed insurance agent, so they can pull every form and every endorsement or your policy and go through it with a fine-tooth comb to figure out exactly what coverages you have and do not have.
Thank you, Alan. Mark, Greg told us about this awesome product that's registered to handle this particular virus, and Alan went through a few of those insurance-related and business-related pitfalls that we're all on this call to understand. I know you probably have plenty to say about the value of a contract, these ultra-hazardous exposures, the damage claims that Alan was referring to, and probably a lot more. So tell us what you'd advise your clients when they're considering adding a service like this to their company offerings.
Well, probably over the last 3 weeks, I've been inundated with phone calls, and conservatively, I probably get 5 to 10 phone calls a day from pest control companies wanting me to put together a contract for them to promote this service. It's not, because it's so new and there are so many facets to what you do, and there's so much liability out there. It's difficult to write a contract, and no lawyer worth his salt or her salt is going to tell you that they're going to be able to issue you or put together a contract that's going to avoid all liability. It's just impossible, especially in this area. But what I'm seeing when I talk to my clients is, they go out and they buy these products and they're ready to go. They buy the product and now they try to figure out a way to utilize this product. And they don't think of all the liability issues that surround it. One of the first things that I would jump out is, if most of you were watching your emails back on the 19th of the month, Joe Parker from the Department of Agriculture went out and sent out some guidance to industry that 42 really doesn't cover the application of this disinfectant. It doesn't fall within the ambit of a pesticide. So, now you're looking at, okay, well, if this disinfectant, this EPA registered disinfectant, doesn't fall within 42, what does it fall under? And, but he does say that, the department would reserve the right to ensure that you're applying this product within label requirements. So a bunch of my clients have gone out and bought this product, and now they're trying to figure out how to put it in play. First thing I would say to you is that, and I can ask Alan to jump in here, is you better make sure your workers' comp code covers this, because what I'm finding out is that this workers' comp code is more janitorial than it is for pesticide. So the very first thing you need to call Alan or whoever, call your insurance agent. So, do I have workers' comp coverage for this? Because if you do not have workers' comp coverage and one of your employees is injured as a result of this application or during the application, you may open yourself up to liability. The second thing is making sure you have the right insurance, like Alan said. Now, I've had clients who have called me up, and their agents have called me up and found out that a lot of insurance companies are putting moratoriums on issuing insurance like this. Markel is one of them that is just not writing this. So I will tell you, the industry right now, so many people have called their insurance agents trying to find this insurance, and they're having difficulty finding it. So if you don't have coverage, you may have problems getting coverage for this. And like Alan said, if you think your policy does cover it, you need to get with your agent or your insurance company's underwriting to make sure that you can do this, because otherwise you're naked. And there are some cut rate policies out there I've seen that are very, very basic janitorial policies that you all are trying to operate under that really have very, very, very small BI limits. BI meaning bodily injury. And you need to be careful. But I want to back up to something that Greg said in his presentation. Interesting. The other day I had a client call me up. And he says, and I've been telling him all these parade of horribles as far as trying to get into this. And he goes, okay, stop thinking like a lawyer. He goes, start thinking like an entrepreneur. How would you do this? And I said, well, look, I'm not taking a position on this one way or another, but I think that the very first thing you should do is make sure you have proper protocols in place. Make sure that you know what you're doing. When you look at the product, you look at these product labels, they have very, very basic safety procedures on them. And here you are dealing with COVID-19, and they don't even know how this is transmitted. It's aerosol, they don't know. And stop and think about it. In some situations, you may be sending your employee into a hot vector. You're physically sending your employee into a known risk. And I asked my clients, I said, so what are you doing for personal protective equipment for your employees? And the first thing, well, we're going to give them a respirator. Well, if you look at the CDC guidelines for dealing with this, they're talking full suits. They're talking jumpsuits. They're talking all sorts of things. And I've got a slide that we can shift over to show you what they're requiring. And many of the clients who are talking to me do not understand what the proper PPE requirements are for dealing with COVID-19. If you look at the label for a lot of these products, these products tell you what you're supposed to have on for administering the products. You know, your gloves, your smock, those sorts of things. But what the labels don't tell you is how to protect your employees from the virus itself. When you're dealing with a virus that you don't know how it's transmitted, how do you come up with the proper protective equipment to put your folks in harm's way? Then there's a training protocol. You know, they're talking about this virus leveling out and at some point everybody getting back to work. There's a lot of front end capital, or I should say, that you're going to have to expend to get spun up to start doing this work. And by the time, in my mind, by the time you put the protocols, by the time you find the PPE, if you can find it, stop and think about it. Hospitals are having trouble finding PPE. How are you going to find it? And what is that proper PPE? Are you going to be able to get it in time before the virus subsides? And then all of a sudden you're left with pallets of product and PPE that you may not be able to use. I mean, when this virus subsides. The other thing I want to point out to y'all is, as with any pesticide application, my best defense to you is demonstrating that you have proper training for the application that you're going to make. Well, what is your training protocol? Do you have one in place? Have you developed one? What is it? And from the first time your employee makes contact with that customer to the time they go home at night, do you have a protocol? What is the training on that? Have you developed that? And how long is it going to take you to do that? And I want to point out one more thing. Workers' comp, let's assume that you have the correct workers' comp insurance. Okay, so fine. Workers' comp insurance may cover any, let's assume you send an employee into a hot vector, that employee gets sick, gets COVID-19. There may be coverage under your workers' comp policy for that. But what happens when that employee leaves work and goes home to the wife and kids, and then all of a sudden he's not decontaminated or she's not efficiently, and he brings that into his or her home, and all of a sudden the husband or the wife or the children get sick? Has anybody thought about how you're going to decontaminate those employees? No, nobody thinks about all this stuff. So there's a lot that, from a liability standpoint, that can happen here. Now, my specialty is really defense of the pest control industry. But I will tell you, all those lawyers that are on television now thanking everybody for everything they're doing out there, are probably going to be the same lawyers who are looking to take on these cases when employees get sick or the customer gets sick. So just because right now you haven't seen that litigation, I guarantee you those law firms are already thinking about what was the standard of care, what should you have done? Should you have discussed this with an epidemiologist before you started this procedure? It's just the way it is. It's the way litigation is, and these things up. So before you go jumping into this, it may look like a great new revenue stream for you. Before you go into this, you need to stop and think about all these aspects. It's not just about getting, the product. It's not just about putting a mask on your employee. It's not just about these little things. You've got to think it all through. Sean came up with a fantastic article that I think pretty much covers everything except for perhaps the decontamination. Are you able to put that up, Sean?
That's you. You have to hit that green button and do screen share.
Oh, now you can make me work.
Yeah.
Let's see, where's it at? There it is. If y'all wanted to see an article that I thought, and Sean came up with it, so I'm going to give him credit for it. But this article is outstanding, because what this article does is it goes through pretty much everything that we've talked about, all the ups and downs, considerations for employees, on the infection itself, on training, potential services, and this comes out of the restoration industry. Didn't come out of pest control, didn't come out of janitorial, but pre-work preparation of your employees. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to the start of this, and I want you all to write this down and take a look at this article, because I think this would be a good starting place for any company that is thinking about getting into this. Can you all see it? It's put out by the Restoration.
Mark, for the
That
rest,
way-
we'll have this document available after the meeting. It will also be online on FPMA's
Sure.
website.
Now, the other thing that you have to be that I want you all to consider is we're always talking about, civil lawsuits, and we talk about, insurance and workers' comp, but you also have to consider OSHA, because OSHA requirements jump in here as well. And employees have the right to be in a safe environment. They have the right to have the proper safety gear. And again, this really goes back to the PPE, because if you don't outfit them correctly, you don't train them correctly, you put them in that hot vector, and it's possible that you could end up with an OSHA violation as well as a civil violation. And if I can get to this last one, let's see. If you go to the OSHA site, there's a good article here. This is the one about job safety and knowing your employees' rights. And then one more. I'm just happy because this is actually new to me.
Mark, you have to stop sharing the other one and share the new one.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I've taken up a lot of time here. I'll jump into this later.
CDC website is where Mark was talking about, and the OSHA website has some guidance too, but that RIA document tends to put people in the right direction if you're interested, and we'll have that information available for you. Greg, you guys are such a great company, and you got a lot of products. Everybody's familiar with you guys, and I know internally you had no idea. DSV's been around long before COVID. You had no idea this was coming, and all of a sudden you're inundated with pallet by pallet orders, as you mentioned. And what do you do, and how do you get ramped up? But is there anything you could share with this group that would do one of two things? I mean, be a good sales rep. How would you sway us towards doing this? And also, how would you sway somebody who is not prepared away?
Well, I think it's really important, and thank you for that. I think it's really important for registrants to stay in their lane, okay? We are not going to be an expert on telling people to get into the business. We're going to stop short. We like to raise the points, like as the insurance and the contracts and what have you, so people can think. And then we have experts like Alan and Mark to take it a step further as you go through your decision-making process, all right? The most important thing from a registrant's viewpoint is whether your product is going to work. And it's really somewhat frightening to hear some of the home brews that are being made out there. It's frightening to hear about people just grabbing whatever they can and start using disinfection service. And this is why, there's a real formal process to get on that list N. And that's why I think that's so important. So probably one of the best things people can do, I want to emphasize one more time, don't even think about a product unless it's on list N. Now that's self-serving, it sounds like, because ours is on there. There are a lot of products on there, but do not go out and grab anything that says disinfectant, because you're immediately setting yourself up for liability before you even start working on it, because you didn't do your due diligence, if that terminology is correct, Alan. And so I really do believe that that's an important point. Quaternary ammonias are the ones that are going to be probably the most commonly used out there, and DSV just happens to be one. And yes, it's been quite a bonanza for us, but it's also been a very painful bonanza. We don't like to capitalize on someone's poor health, and that's what's a scary thing. But at the same time, we as an industry have a long history of rising to the occasion and doing what we can to help with health. So I think as a partnership with whatever registrant you select, whatever products you select, partner with them. That's probably one of the most important points.
That's an awesome point, Greg. The whole issue really is bigger than just spraying stuff down. That's for sure. Alan, you talked a little bit about insurance policies and what would that policy sort of look like if a guy was to go out and ask Alan Fugler, I want to do this and I need you to write me insurance. What kind of things would we be considering? Is it even something that could be offered? And the other part is on that workers' comp. You brought up a great point about workers' comp. Is workers' comp even going to be available from this point going forward when the underwriters understand this unknown risk exists? It didn't exist before.
And you're right. The communicable disease exclusion for workers' comp is a long-standing endorsement from ISO, the standard bearer for the industry or insurance industry. So that's nothing new. And how it applies in this communicable disease is kind of unique. There usually is coverage for occupational exposures. If it's something that you're normally exposed to, and black lung for coal miners comes to mind. If the one source that you're going to get black lung is the coal mine, then obviously the coverage needs to address that. However, you made the point, or Mark made the point earlier about bringing this home. If you've got a unusual, novel a vector out there and it's not considered in coverage, you may want to take a look at that. And not all workers' comp policies will have that exclusion, but you certainly may want to have that considered. General liability coverage. I mentioned that restoration contractor, that environmental remediation company. Those are really the types of professions that deal with these situations. Think about CSI. Think about biohazard intervention. Think about cleaning up from a crime scene, for instance. That is really the kind of pathogenic protection that you would need to accomplish this. And those policies address that. Now, the application for that coverage could be done, I guess, through your standard pest control company. And you'd have your company, your pest control company named as an additional insured on that new policy. However, the most protective thing you can do is form a separate entity that would provide these services. It's been done already in the industry. I know of several examples of people that really think this is a long-term viable business plan, and they had formed separate companies and secured this coverage. But again, it's the markets that I'm aware of, insurance carriers that I'm aware of, have been inundated in the past 6 to 8 weeks. And a lot of them are pulling back on the availability of this coverage because they've been inundated with companies that have no previous experience with it. Mark brought up a great point about training and supervision, about cross-contamination, about the proper PPE. You want to make sure that your plan is so defined that you have a written and trained protocol on how to take off gloves and not spread the virus around, that you have a trained protocol on how to decontaminate between stops, which means probably decontaminating in the front yard or in an area of one customer before you get in the truck and contaminate your truck to go to the next stop. That's the level of detail that will certainly provide a better protection for the health of your employees and better protection against any accusations of negligence or for the company. So those are really fine points. It's copious amounts of information. It's a long needs to be a long process that needs to be vetted by an epidemiologist or a virologist to make sure that it's CDC compliant and makes good epidemiological and medical sense to do so. There's videos that you can see on the internet where it's a demonstration where you start with paint and you dabble paint on, and you can see very easily how the disease particles are transmitted, even by duffing gloves from somebody that's not properly trained. And then they touch their cell phone, they touch their face, they touch a surface, and then they deposit virus particles and then pick up that virus particle a little bit later on. So it's something that really needs to be thought out and trained thoroughly on.
It's a great point. And one thing that's for sure is we're learning all those things you just mentioned, new things that we never thought about before. I mean, you just didn't think about some of these things, and now they're brand new, and it's on the edge of learning and training to get prepared for. Mark, the FPMA and its membership, all these folks on this phone, probably most of them are your customer at some point along the way. These guys would probably love to hear some sage advice from you on this. And right before we get to a few questions, anything you would like to add?
Sure. Those of you who are calling me, telling me that you want to do this disinfection with ozone generators, UV lights, or air purifiers, please don't. If you go on the CDC website, you see that they are ineffective against this virus. So please, please be aware of that. And again, I'm almost every phone call I get from my clients are saying, I want an airtight contract. You're not going to get one. You can put in restrictions on liability, limitations on liability, exclusion clauses. Just know under Florida law that you cannot contract away negligence. So, you've got to be able to think this one through. And I think the ones who are going to capitalize in this market are the ones that are able to mobilize and put together these protocols, have insurance in place the fastest. Those are the ones that are going to capitalize. The guys that go out there and think that they're just going to throw a guy in a truck with a respirator, you're going to end up just in litigation time and time again. So be careful. And, if you have any questions after this, you're welcome to call my office. As an FPMA member, I'll try to answer anything I can.
Very good. Thank you. We got a little bit of time for some questions, and we were having people send them to Leslie, but somebody just popped one up on text chat. Decontamination prior going to next client. What about GHP? Is this something pest operators are doing? They could bring contamination from one house to another, even if we aren't doing decontamination. Well, Susan, I think you probably answered your own questions, more of a statement. Maybe that's something Greg would care to address.
Yeah, and we've had that question several times, and thank you. Yeah, you do have to be careful. I mean, we did the same type of thing with bed bugs, and bed bugs generally won't kill you. We talked about not moving them from one account to the next account, from one account to your truck, or to your office or to your home, right? And we have to actually take those bed bug protocols and magnify them 100 times. And so absolutely is a big deal. That should be part of your protocol. We're not going to actually lay out a protocol today, but that should be part of your protocol. What do you do when you leave one job site? What do you do if you just go in for an inspection? You're not sure if you're going to be doing the work at this particular location, but you're going to go and inspect. You still could be subject to the virus. So absolutely, we have to be experts in paranoia here. And Charlene, who's on the call, has gotten a lot of questions from folks in Florida, and she's passed them along to us. And a lot of the questions were related to PPE. And I want to emphasize, I said it once, Mark said it once, PPE on the pesticide label is for pesticide use as mandated by EPA. It is not how to protect yourself from the virus, okay? Really important.
We have another question that just popped up on the chat from Nat Perez. I think she's sitting there on our screen with video looking at us now. Where can we find information on proper training? So I think that's a very difficult question for anybody to answer at this point. There's multiple resources available on the CDC's website, EPA, the label, and the registrant probably provide some resource material for you to review. But I think that you're going to want to be very, very conscientious of what training, what you think is training. Is that reading the label and enough for you, or is it going to be more? So again, I hate to divert back to Greg and make you talk some more, but you're the expert on this product right now.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of people have said the same thing. Charlene's gotten those questions as well. What kind of protocol do we have? Well, someone asked us to put together a technical bulletin. We did a one pager, and it said, hard porous surface. Here's what hard porous surfaces are. Here's our product works on hard non-porous surfaces. And that's about it. Because every company is going to be different. Every mix of business is going to be different. And that's when we talk about staying in our lane, it would be a disservice to our customers to start telling them what to do in their business beyond using the product. So we've actually, is anybody out there doing it? I don't believe NPMA has at this point. So I don't believe that there is a boilerplate protocol, to answer your question.
This one is for you, Alan. Why is it so hard to get an insurance company? I'm looking for one for about 3 weeks and can't get one to cover disinfection work. That's from Pedro.
Well, and Sean, a lot of this is driven by the inundation of applications and interest in this particular service. Underwriters depend on uniformity and consistency. They're used to their lane. They know how to underwrite a pest control business, let's say. A janitorial risk carrier would know how to write janitorial operations. But when you throw in this completely novel and unexpected, curveball in, they're just pulling back. They're being conservative so they don't expose themselves legally, civilly, to additional claims from companies that have no prior experience with this outside of standard integrated pest management, sanitation and disinfecting services. It's not the same. When you're offering this as a sanitation service to mitigate or control a human-to-human disease vector, it's not the same thing as providing those same services after a pest infestation has been corrected.
Very good. I've got another one coming back to you, Greg. What is the average cost of treatment? We knew that was coming, right?
Every webinar, we have that question. Okay, here's my suggestion. I'm going to tell you how to, let's just assume you've gone through everything, you develop your protocol, okay? So how do you price anything? You price anything with your cost of materials, you have your labor, okay, and you're going to have your overhead in addition to that, and you're going to have your profit margin, okay? When you're calculating your labor, multiply it by 2, because you're going to be out there a lot longer than you ever thought you would. To actually talk about pricing, obviously we can't talk about pricing per square foot. That's not something that anybody's allowed to do publicly. So I would say you just step through your calculations the same way you do for any type of interior work, and then multiply it by 2.
So give me a number, throw a number, a house.
A dollar amount?
Yep.
Probably won't want to do that, huh, Mark? I'm glad you came on.
No, we probably don't want to do that.
All right. Well, I tried.
Yeah. You know what? Just if you have a model for, I would say a general clean out, okay, use that as a basis, because if you calculated what your general clean out's going to be, but then just figure it's going to be twice as long, okay? It's not your cost of materials, it's your time. How's that, Mark? Was that legal?
That walked right up to the line. That was okay. What we're talking about, just for the general audience, FPMA is not allowed to engage in any activity that would constitute price fixing. So Greg can't really tell you what to charge, because it could set the standard for the industry, and then it could be an FPMA could be in some trouble. We just don't want to do anything that looks like price fixing.
And we would be subject in all 50 states plus federal.
Right. All right, I have another one for Alan here. Let me get that one pulled back up. Well, it's kind of something you may have already tried to cover, but where could you get insurance for it? And it says that his broker, name unmentioned, says none of their underwriters are even interested in adding that liability insurance for disinfecting on Florida paper. Where would you look?
Yeah, the markets that I'm aware of are usually written on what's called surplus lines forms. So they're a different type of insurance carrier because of the unique environmental nature of this exposure. And I would be glad to speak with the agent that and maybe provide some direction for that agent if they've been successful in researching available and willing markets out there.
And I know the chat bar is filling up over there, but there's another one that popped up. Somebody saying it's 90% negative information on this call. Well, I think you can look at it either way. We're trying to give you the information that you need to make an educated decision. Then there was another one. Somebody made a comment about pricing and what they saw in advertising. You can read that yourself.
Sean,
Sean, let me jump in here for a minute. To the individual that said that it sounds like 90% of it, the idea here is to educate, show you what the risk is. It's to tell you what types of products you should be using, products that maybe you shouldn't be using, what type of insurance coverage you should have. As an entrepreneur, there's no risk. Without risk, there's no reward. So while we're giving you things to think about, we're not telling you one way or another whether you should jump into this or not. What we're trying to tell you is be wise about it. Make sure that you've done all your homework before you jump into this and pick the correct product. Don't go off on a tangent. Nobody's telling you not to do it. They're just telling you to be wise about it. Make sure you have all your bases covered.
And to jump on that, Mark, if I could, I think it's important to know too that this is brand new. I mean, this is not like a virus that's been around for 50 years and we've just not dealt with it. This is totally confusing to the insurers. It's confusing to the attorneys. It's confusing to the registrants and confusing to the pest control industry. It'll take a while before that settles down. I mean, we're looking at probably 6 weeks before. It's only been 6 weeks since we really started looking at this as an industry.
That's a great point, Greg. I want everyone to know, because you've been very busy paying attention to our speakers, that just moments ago, the PPP and EIDL funding was signed into law by the president. So that $310 billion in funding and $50 billion for EIDL has passed and been signed by the president. So if you guys have been waiting in line for a loan, let's hope that you're on your way. I want to try and keep this thing on time as close as possible, and it's a few minutes after 2. And I would like to thank very much our speakers who have so graciously taken their time to work with us and give us this valuable information so that we can make good decisions, best decisions we possibly can. We'll have the contact information for each speaker available. The presentation is being recorded, so I know they're going to have that available for you as well, plus some of the documents that Mark shared and mentioned. We'll have links to that. So we'll have all that there. I want to thank everybody again today for participating on the FPMA webinar, and I'd like to say a prayer quietly for all those that have suffered from the COVID-19 and for those hands that have healed them on the front line of our healthcare system. So thank you, everybody, and I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, FPMA.
Thank you.